In early 2021, global international oceanic trade stood at standstill for nearly a week as a container ship got stuck in the Suez Canal. Roughly 12% of global trade was held up because of one boat. It was a big boat, but still. As soon as the ship got stuck, major companies and countries around the world started looking for alternative ways to get their products to market. One route, through Canada's far north, in particular has begun to grab the attention of the world. This route is most commonly known as the Northwest Passage, and if utilized to its full extent, could revolutionize the world's global trade as we know it, and potentially be the key to Canada's far north among global powers, and perhaps the future of Canadian settlement. Oh, and if you enjoy this kind of geography content, please be sure to subscribe. It's free, and you can always change your mind. Thanks to the world's rapidly changing climate, the Arctic Ocean's ice cap is melting at a rapid pace. And with the ice rapidly melting, the difficulty to get through the passage has changed a considerable amount, with parts of the year now being completely ice-free for months on end. This openness has led to more commercial enterprises going through the passage, with the first commercial bulk carrier making its way through the passage in 2013. It traveled from Vancouver to Pori, Finland, and in the process saved money on canal fees that it would have had to pay if it went through the Panama Canal, as well as on fuel due to the shorter route. 3 years later, in 2016, the Crystal Serenity became the first cruise ship to sail through the passage, carrying 1,600 people. That's more people than live in most of the towns along the route. When the cruise ship stops by some of the small villages along the way, some small business owners made almost more in one day than an entire year. And this is just the beginning. Currently, the passage stays open for a short 2-month period in the summer months, although increasingly the season is expected to extend further. This means within the next few decades, the passage could see up to 4 or 5 months of ice-free waters in the far north. And if some predictions prove true, the Arctic Ocean's ice may melt completely by 2100. For commercial enterprises, the Northwest Passage brings with it a bunch of advantages. With a shorter route, fuel can be saved, and most importantly, the passage provides an alternative to the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal limits the size of ships, charges money to use, and has considerable wait times, which can last days. The Northwest Passage eliminates all of these issues. Let's say even a lowball estimate of 15% of the nearly 14,000 ships that transited through the Panama Canal in 2019 moved up to the Northwest Passage. Including tourist cruises, that would equal about 2,000 ships per year. And given the fact that this traffic will be limited to a short season, it means this would equal about 17 ships a day entering the passage, or about 119 ships per week, which is close to 500 boats a month. This amount of shipping means the far north of Canada will need a massive amount of new infrastructure, from roads and railways to ports and hotels. Essentially, this region will need to become the future of Canadian settlement. In all likelihood, the new Arctic cities, if you want to call them that, will grow from the existing towns and villages along the passage's route. In total, there are 11 communities strewn across 2 of the 3 Canadian territories. From west to east, these are Tuktoyaktuk, Sax Harbor, Paulatuk, Uklahaktuk, Kugluktuk, Cambridge Bay, Johaven, Taloyak, Resolute, Arctic Bay, and Pond Inlet. Additionally, the capitals of Nunavut and Greenland have already seen a notable amount of investment in the last few years, which will likely continue to increase as shipping grows. Currently, the region is sparsely populated due to the harsh climate. Only about 11,000 people currently live along the route, and the vast majorities are local indigenous Inuit people. The opening of the passage comes with pros and cons for the Inuit, as the increased economic activity could bring high wages and upgrade infrastructure, as well as increased access to international goods, which could help lower the cost of food in the region, which currently has some of the highest food costs on Earth. However, with increased economic activity will come more immigration to the region from other parts of Canada and people from across the globe, which may put pressure on the language and the culture of the Inuit people and threaten their traditional ways of life. Over the last few decades, the territory's populations have already seen a considerable rise, with Nunavut's population expected to double within the next 3 decades. In 1999, when the territory was first created, its population was only 26,000, and this has since risen to over 40,000 in 2022. Although most of this population growth is from births, not immigration, immigration is continuing to play a larger role. When it comes to the politics of the Arctic Ocean, things are a little complicated. Canada claims these waters are internal waters, and as such claims that it should be able to regulate how many and what kinds of ships go through the passage. This is disputed by the United States and a few other countries around the world that believe it is an international waterway, in the same way that the Turkish and Singapore Strait straits are international waters, meaning that everybody accepts that it's Canadian, but Canada can't control what sails through it.
We recognize that Russia is not the only nation making illegitimate claims. The U.S. has a long contested feud with Canada over sovereign claims through the Northwest Passage.
Canada mostly wants to have internal rights so it can control what kinds of ships go through and potentially charge passage fees to help some of the increased naval costs in the area. The Panama Canal, for comparison, makes about $3 billion a year in passage fees, which is almost the equivalent of the entire GDP of Nunavut, and would help considerably in covering increased naval resources in the area. But with the world knocking at the door of the Canadian Arctic, it's hard to say if Canada or any of the territories will even be able to stop this traffic from coming through. The potential growth in the Northwest Passage has led to some massive projects being both proposed and built. To get an idea of some of the scale, let's talk about some of these projects, starting in the west with Tuktoyaktuk. Tuktoyaktuk, with its 1,000 or so people, is one of the communities that may experience massive growth over the next few decades with its strategic location at the western entrance of the Canadian part of the Northwest Passage. Prime Minister Stephen Harper, as part of his Arctic sovereignty plan, made linking this remote Inuit village with the rest of the North American road network a priority during this term. This led to the 737-kilometer-long Dempster Highway being extended 156 kilometers to the Arctic Ocean, connecting the town to the regional center of Inuvik. Investment in the Arctic is not cheap, and this gravel road through the tundra was no exception, coming in at a little over $300 million, or roughly $1.9 million a kilometer. The Dempster Highway connection was designed to help breathe economic life into this region and help make oil and gas developments in the Beaufort Sea more economically viable. This road expansion has since brought new economic life to Tuktoyaktuk, as it is one of the shortest routes to the Arctic Ocean by car on the North American road network, making it a major tourist attraction. Tuktoyaktuk has also been proposed as the beginning of the prospective $16.2 billion, 758-mile-long Mackenzie Valley pipeline that would connect the Beaufort Sea oil to the rest of the North American pipeline network. Although this pipeline has faced opposition from environmental groups and economically feasibility issues with the current price of oil. Along with the prospective Mackenzie Valley pipeline and Dempster Highway connection, there's also been discussions on building a deepwater port to handle increased maritime traffic in this area. This is not the only deepwater port that's proposed along the passage's route. Another large deepwater port that is proposed is the Grays Bay Road and Port Project, which, if built, would be the first road connection to Nunavut from the rest of Canada. The proposed corridor would connect open-pit zinc mining projects at Ixok Lake with diamond mines in the Northwest Territories and the rest of the Northwest Territory road network. The Grays Bay Road would include over 600 kilometers of an all-season road, about 230 kilometers of which would be in Nunavut and 413 kilometers in the Northwest Territories. This would replace the dangerous Tippett to Contwoito ice road that was featured on the first season of Ice Road Truckers. The current proposal would see the port built at Grays Bay and Coronation Gulf, southeast of Kugluktuk. The project has received backing from the territorial governments in Nunavut and the Northwest Territories and would connect Yellowknife, the capital of the Northwest Territories, to the ocean and help make mining and resource extraction projects more economically feasible in the area. Canada is also in the process of increasing its military presence in the region, and as part of this is in the process of building a new naval base at the eastern entrance of the passage near the town of Arctic Bay. This naval station, once fully operational, will be used by new Arctic cable ships Canada is currently in the process of building and help secure Canada's sovereignty in the area. Further along the passage, increased shipping has led to some major projects being proposed or created along the passage's route in other countries. In Nuuk, the capital of Greenland, the port underwent a $63 million expansion, which was completed in 2017, doubling its capacity. Nuuk is the largest city on this trade route currently, with a population of a little over 18,000, which is projected to grow to 22,000 by 2031, thanks in part to brand new neighborhoods which are of considerable scale being created. On the American side of the trade route, near both the Northwest and Northeast Passage's entrances in Alaska, is the town of Nome, located on the Stewart Peninsula at the entrance to the Bering Strait. The town's port recently got approved for the construction of a $505 million deepwater port expansion. With strong growth rates above 10% on average in many Northwest Passage communities, along with major infrastructure projects on the table, show that the Northwest Passage is indeed opening up to the world. That being said, Canada will need to continue to invest in the North as the passage becomes a more popular trade route. If Canada is not prepared and a disaster were to strike in any form, like a transiting oil tanker spill in the Arctic, it would devastate the delicate ecosystem. What do you think of this passage, Al? Let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching.